$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soulblazer and George.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES podcast, episode number 116 for you. As always, I'm Greg. He's George.
So I'm made out of clay.
We should all be made out
I
of
couldn't think of anything good. I'm sorry.
Hey, that works. We should all be made out of clay. I think people were more flexible and softer these days, the world would be a better place.
Sure.
Anyway, on that,
coming to you in claymation form.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We're covering a game that's actually related, very similar to another game we covered a while back, which versions we're talking about here in like a moment. We're looking at the platformer game Claymates, which was developed by Visual Concepts and published by Interplay of the Super NES in North America, April of 1994, and for some reason Europe got it first, November 1993.
They begged really hard for it.
I don't know. Visual Concepts isn't. Visual Concepts is a American company, so Interplay probably just simply wanted to put the game out in Europe first for some reason. So I have no idea. But this is but it is curious. This is the first case I remember of the game being released in PAL lands first. So, but anyway, this is a Patreon pick. We want to give a special thanks to Daniel, one of our recent $5 backers, who requested this game. Said it was a childhood favorite of his, and I can see why. It's a very competent, well put together platformer. That's pretty. It's pretty well thought of these days.
Spoilers.
Yeah, no harm. Yeah, there's no harm saying it. Covering it now. So the reason that the reason I said this game is similar to another game we covered in the past, this game shares a lot in common with the fighting game Clay Fighter, because these games were developed with the same tools, the same engine. They both use the same like clay animation graphical style, and they both developed the same company, Visual Concepts. So. Visual Concepts said they wanted to do something else with the technology because, of course, they spent all that time and money developing Clay Fighter in the first place. So, platformers were a very popular genre in Super NES during this time period. So, the idea of making a clay-inspired platformer game just came right to mind. So, side note here, just real quick. I think I mentioned it before in the past, but as a kid, I was a huge fan of platformers, both the NES and Super NES games.
And he's not just talking about his size. I'm sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. Because platformers were one of the biggest genres back then. So it's platformers, there was a large chunk library that you're missing out on. So, but I never got around to playing this game back when it was new. I just never got to it for some reason or another. Even though the game did review very well when it came out, which we'll talk about here later on. But nowadays, however, by the time I got into college, my taste had changed, and I was gravitating more toward genres like RPGs and simulation games and whatnot. And I really have not played too many platformers since then. But it's definitely curious to go back and look at an old platformer like this and play it for the first time and be like, yeah, if I played this back when it first came out, how would I have liked it, and just all that kind of stuff. So, it's interesting. I think we would have covered this game eventually, if not, if it hadn't been a Patreon pick.
It would have been your pick, though.
Yes, George is not a huge. George is not a huge fan of platformers, but that's fine. I mean, like, it's good. He's a very good yin, like my yang, as far as like talking about this game. So.
I was thinking about something recently, and I realized that platformers back then were kind of like the action games now, or whatever you want to call them, because the reason why platformers kind of just disappeared is because when the third dimension came into play with things like the PlayStation and whatnot, you were able to do more. Like, you were able to run around a 3D world and actually, go around and smack people and whatnot. And that's kind of what evolved into, open world games and so on and so forth as we know them now. So that's kind of why the platformer died, because platformer was basically the action genre for that era,
I think the quintessential classic example, like the example of that game, like Super Mario 64.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that still had platforming, but yes, also like combat was like they opened that up more because Mario was able to punch and whatnot. So.
Yep. There are still some 3D platformers being made these days.
Certainly.
Right. Yeah, and the 2D platforming and 2D platforming it's like alive and well things like indie games. So the genre is not you're right. The genre is not dead. The genre just simply lost a lot of its popularity they used to, because, like you said, technology I think evolved and allowed it for it to be changed to be changed in numerous ways. So
you're right. I'd rather run around and punch people than jump on platforms and throw baseballs or something.
Right. Exactly. So
yeah.
So, Claymates. We've already talked about visual concepts, visual concepts, the developer, and Interplay Productions, the publisher, during our Clayfighter episode from last year. So check that out. Check that out if you want to hear additional information like on the company.
What episode number is that?
You would ask me that. I don't remember.
Of course I'd ask you that, because I know you didn't know.
Yes. It's in the 90s, I can tell you that much. It's a special, it was the guest episode with Shinto, like the Jaguar podcast.
Right.
So the story for this one
that would be episode 101.
101. Okay, so right at the draft episode. Okay, a little bit later than I thought it was. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So,
you were almost there.
Right. So the story for this game is explained to you like in the opening cutscenes. It's a pretty simple, basic, cartoony platformer story. You play as Clayton, who's the son of Professor Putty. I'm not making this up. That's his name. And your father is on the cusp of a breakthrough with a special kind of a formula. The formula will allow people to turn clay like the animals. Why anybody would want this, I have no idea, but that's what it is. So, I
don't know. Maybe you can turn the clay into an animal and hunt the animal and get food. I don't know.
Wouldn't the food taste like clay though?
Okay, you got me there. But would it make it edible clay then? Would it be like clay meat or?
Is there edible clay?
Well, no, but I'm saying, what if it, you turn clay into an animal? Does that, if it's still made out of clay, does it make it edible now, or?
It might make the animal easy. Might make the animal easier to control, so you can hunt with it and whatnot.
I think we are asking the wrong questions here, actually.
Yes, like I said, this is a very, this is a very silly plot. Don't read too much into it, but anyway, continuing the silliness, a witch doctor comes along, and steals the formula and turns you, Clayton, into a lump of clay. So you have to go on a quest to save your father, stop the witch doctor, and get the formula back.
I get it, Clayton. Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. This game, like Clay Fighter, is filled with tongue-in-cheek references. So,
I actually, that was just a joke. I got it before.
Well, there's another joke in that. There's another joke like the game box. Did you see the picture of the game box, George?
I did not.
Okay, the front of the game box touts the game having Blaze processing. which of course is a play on which of course is a play on blast processing for the Genesis. So
that gave me a headache. I just imagine all the jokes people are gonna come up with now.
Yeah, so like Clay Fighter, this game is filled of this game is filled of like tongue-in-cheek joke references, and the manual is also chock full of them. So, but anyway, so you have your basic platformer game here. Well, I say basic in the basic sense that if you play one platformer, you know how to play most platformers of this time period. So, there are 6 stages altogether in the game, with a boss fight at the end of each stage. George and I were talking about this like off mic a little bit before the podcast. For some reason, they only use 3 buttons, three out of 4 face buttons like on the controller.
Yeah, they use 3 buttons for 4 functions.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
I mean, the controllers are fine, but I think George is right. The layout of the buttons on the controller is not the best, unfortunately, with this game, I think, and you can't change it.
It doesn't make any sense because, well, you have jump, then you have your attack and your special attack. Those are those 3 separate buttons. But also the attack button, if you hold it down, is run. Why? You have another button you have another face button on the controller there, or you have the L and R. You know, I don't think that's used in this game either.
Right.
And it just makes me question, why did they do this? Why did they? It's not a situation where you only have like 2 face buttons, like a NES controller or whatever. You have 4 buttons right there.
Yeah.
And they decided to use 3 for 4 functions.
Yeah.
Interesting design.
I'm not sure either. I mean, you know, this game only came out on Super NES, so they didn't have to take into account the 3-button Genesis controller. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. You know, the controllers are fine once you get the hang of it. It's just the button placement and how they do things is not ideal. I definitely agree with you like of that. So this game does have some very cool features. Some cool features, like it's pretty like unique, and some pretty like unique aspects to it. The animals themselves are definitely one of the like coolest aspects of it because I think I mentioned to you like last week, George. This game reminds me a little bit about the concept's kind of similar to the old NES game. Little Nemo Dream Master by Capcom.
Okay.
We had where Nemo could control animals in that game by tossing candy.
By throwing candy, yep.
Candy like their mouths, and that allowed you doing that allowed you to ride them. In this game, you actually use the powers of the clay to actually to actually turn into the animal. So.
Yeah.
So you get all the skills, functions, weaknesses of that animal. When you do so, certain stages introduce the animals certain times. Like for example, just to give an example, like an example for the first stage, Clayton's Yard, you only have 3 out of 5 animals like available to you. So. And in some areas of the stage, you have to be that animal. The other areas of the game, you can get by with being something else that's not recommended. So,
right.
So it depends upon your playing skill and how good you are and that kind of stuff. So, let's talk about the animals like real quickly. There is Muckster, the cat, who like.
Oh, they have names.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, you didn't tell me this before.
I didn't know they had names because the names only contain the manual. This is, you gotta remember, with old games, a lot of the information about the games only contain the manual, so not mentioned anywhere else.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, limited cart size.
I guess.
But so, like most cats, Muckster is able to attack with his claws, which is the claws. Like, it's a very good attack. He can also cling to trees and climb the trees and climb them up and down that way. Not like most cats. Most cats, from my experience, are able to get up trees very easily, but getting down can be a real challenge. So we're glad Muckster is able to climb down trees. So, his drawback, one hit and you're dead. So we got to be very careful with him that you'll get hit. Then you have Uzi the mouse. He is he's the fastest enemy. Enemy. Yeah, okay. Fastest animal in the game that you can control. And he's also very small, so his hit detection box is very minimal, which helps. The downsides, his attack is very short range, unless you like power up twice to get the projectile attack. So you really got to get up close to do well placed attacks to your enemies. Okay, it makes Uzi one of the more difficult creatures to control, I think. Because of that. So then you have Goopy the fish, and all these names are trademarked, by the way.
I feel like they gave up after the fish, or at the fish. They gave up right at the fish.
Right.
I don't know. We need to give them a name. So.
So Goopy's able to swim around the sea very easily, quickly. He's very maneuverable. He's also able to jump out on the shore where you can just your controls on the ground are more sluggish with him, as opposed to being like in the water. But he's playable but he's playable on land. He can only be on land for a short period of time, though. Holding his breath, that kind of stuff. If you're on land too long with him, he turns back. He turns back into Clayton again. So his attack is to spit air bubbles at like enemies. So pretty good damage, like of him. Then you have Globmeister, the gopher.
I was right. Yeah, they gave up at the fish.
Who has a very long-range attack, the longest range attack we have any kind of creature in the game. He's also able to dig in some spots, which is very handy. So, his drawback, he's a very slow creature. So, he's probably one of the slowest creatures in the game. So, you got to be, move with him very carefully. But you're not going to be able to avoid a lot of the avoid a lot of enemies' attacks with him. Right. And finally, we have Dodo the bird. Dodo's able to fly, of course, obviously. He's not very graceful doing it. He's kind of clunky to control that way. But you can fly over enemies, fly over enemies. They can also reach areas if there is a stage. A stage that nobody other creature can reach. It's a little bit like Mario in Mario 3 when he's a raccoon able to fly. Kind of similar control scheme. Able to reach hidden areas of the stage, that kind of stuff. So, and like Mario, he has to have a runway, quote unquote. He has to build up his speed to be able to get up in the air. So, as you gotta make sure you gotta have enough ground room to have him take off. The main drawback with him is like before. He's kind of clumsy, doesn't handle very well, but still winning on the ground. So, but yeah, all these names definitely have a kind of a Clay connection to them in some way or form. But they're very interesting names, to say the least.
Wait, what does Dodo have to do with Clay?
D-O-U-G-H. That's not
wait. Oh, is that what is it spelled like that?
No, it's spelled D-O-H-D-O-H, but
that's what I was asking. Okay.
But it's pronounced the same way, so at least I think it's pronounced the same way.
I do not have current access to this manual.
Yeah.
So when you said Dodo, I thought you just meant like D-O-D-O.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Speaking of change between the animals, so the animals back and forth during the game at will is a very cool aspect, I thought. It definitely adds a lot of the gameplay to the game, because it's there's certain ways you can approach certain stages with them. Certain ways you can attack the enemies and whatnot. I think it really adds a lot of originality to the game. It kind of makes it more interesting than your average platformer where Joe Blow the whole game. with like one set of attacks and skills. So there's also an interesting thing that happens toward the end of every stage. There's a how can I best describe this? There's kind of a puzzle you have to go through, which is referred to as being called a there's a puzzle. It's kind of like a puzzle at the end of every stage, which like there's enemies in the game that you have to like manipulate around to get them to do certain things to advance. It's like the game. It's very curious. It
was a very interesting design.
Yeah,
that
right.
You had to get these robots to chop down these trees to get on to the next level. I don't know where that came from, but
no, me neither.
It adds another. What? Yeah, no. Yeah. It adds another layer to it, though. So
yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, that's kind of different. There's also
it's nothing crazy too. It's a simple little puzzle. And
it's pretty easy.
The next place.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's also two bonus levels that you can access in the game by doing certain things. I'm not sure if you ran into both these bonus levels, George, but during the game, to play the game, you collect crystals. Crystals operate kind of like with coins, like the coins do the Mario games. If you collect 100 crystals in this game, like you go to a special bonus level, which is called the grid. Your obstacle here is to bounce. You have to bounce. There's some yellow squares that will light up, and you have to bounce them like in order. And if you do that correctly, you receive an extra life. So they make you so they operate like coins. They give you a chance to get extra life, but they make you work for it. So it's curious. There's also, George. You probably like this one the best. Every now and then during the game, if you look around, you can find hidden letters that spell out the word clay.
Right.
If you collect all 4 letters, like in the stage, then you go up to another bonus level, which is basically just like pachinko balls. I mean,
kind of.
Yeah. So, but
reminded me of pinball.
Yep.
It's got the bumpers and all that stuff, all the switches and whatnot.
Yep. So yeah. So like two. Yeah. So like both. Yeah. So So I really enjoyed both these bonus games. Bonus game of being here, kind of went above and beyond the platformer, like itself at a basic level. So it was fun to, fun to have those. There's also again the Mario games. There's also plungers that you can run into every now and then. If you activate this, if you lose a life, you'll start the stage again like at that point. So in some stages it's pretty long, so thank God they're here. I was really happy. I was really happy to see those. So there's also unlimited continues in the game, so has that going for it. There's also as you play the game, you can also find a whole bunch of other special items. There are eyes that will reveal hidden objects for you. Balloons will allow you to be carried up. I carry up like the sky. We grab it, which will allow you to find like certain items. Invincibility potions will make you invincible for a short period of time. Hammers will touch it, cause enemies to freeze and scream for a few seconds at a time. So
does that make you a hammer brother?
No, unfortunately not.
Dang.
They would have been Super Nintendo like they'd done that.
Are you sure? I don't know. They don't own brothers and they don't own hammers, do they? I don't know.
They would have tried though. You know how happy Nintendo is. So.
Hey, you have a character with a mustache in your game. We're gonna sue you.
You also have magnets. Will draw the crystals toward you, even ones you can't see. That's pretty cool. The Twister will unleash a whirlwind that will destroy all enemies like in your path for a short period of time. And dimensional doors will take you to secret areas. Kind of the equivalent again like a Mario, like going down a pipe, like finding a coin room. So, enemies in the game include some very interesting designs. The enemies themselves are pretty basic, but how they look in the game, like the attacks they do, like are pretty cool. There are limited but not exclusive. There are bulldogs, Malibu ducks, prickly snails, snapperheads, clay-nosed sharks, sumo wrestlers, spitting like Claymates, which are supposed to be related to dragons, mud skippers, Claymore dragons themselves, samurais, evil clouds, bees, weasels, and homing mines. So, and you also have like bosses. Some of the bosses are Weebigle, the spider, Ben the dog, Corky the clam, and Jobo the human. I guess he's a human primal. I guess look at this picture. So okay.
No idea.
Yep. So graphics. As I mentioned before, this game uses the same claymation engine that Clayfighters does. So the whole game is a very clay. Well, a lot of the game has a very like clay look to it. But I really like these graphics. They're very bright, colorful, cartoony. Nice detail on them. Very smooth scrolling. Very good, like small detail. There's a lot of caretaking touches in the game. In the game, the graphics, as far as like the water, the attacks the enemies, and the water how it flies around, the clouds and whatnot. Very very good looking graphics. It's a very handsome looking game.
Yeah, and it also has a very nice style to it as well. With all the with the level design and all the assets with that, the different areas, they're not all the same. At the beginning you have, was it Clayton's backyard or whatever? Clayton's yard.
Yep, that's it.
And it's basically like it's kind of like being in somebody's backyard or front yard or something, and you're running around there. It's almost like a rural area or something. And then you have, what is it? There's like a beach level.
Yep.
There's also like a ancient Japanese themed area as well, I think.
Yeah, the stages are the backyard, the Pacific, Japan, Africa, like in outer space.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and each place doesn't, obviously doesn't look the same, and there's definitely a lot of effort put in this game, and it's definitely got style, I have to say. There's definitely style to it.
Kind of reminds me a little bit about Earthworm Jim, like the graphics, the graphics in that game. Like, do you remember that game, George?
I don't want to. Yeah, no, definitely. It doesn't have the same kind of feeling, but I know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
I mean,
Earthworm Jim had a lot of style as well.
Yeah. Exactly. And the developers said they wanted this game to kind of be the Super NES version of Sonic. As far as the not so much as far as the enemies that is. As far as the graphics concerned, but as far as the play levels, they want to be bright, colorful, detail, that kind of stuff. So,
I wouldn't compare this to Sonic. It doesn't really have the same kind of feel.
Well, I'm just saying what the developers said. So.
Well, I know, but I'm saying what I want to say.
Yeah.
What I want to say is, I don't have that kind of feeling.
But yeah, definitely. This is a very, the clay animation really only shows up, I think, with the enemies, like the creatures yourself. So it's not quite, but still they do look, they do look clayish, without really being like, they have a more, what's the word I want to use for it? They have a more realistic look as opposed to the cartoony fighters that you're using in the Clay Fighter, I suppose. Might be
this definitely looks different from Clay Fighter.
Definitely. Yep. Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, very, very, very.
This looks
very-
more not cinematic, but more like, oh, I don't know how to explain it. Because Clay Fighter looked, it definitely looks different in the sense of how they made it or whatever. This looks more, I guess all I could say is really cinematic in a sense. Not exactly what I mean, but there's
Right, yeah.
definitely a different style to this game compared to Clay Fighter. I think Clay Fighter was supposed to be more goofy and wacky and whatnot compared to this game, really.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah,
As much as this game is about being a person being turned into clay, like it turned into different clay animals, but yeah.
right.
Uh,
So yeah, like very, very good looking game. So it looks, even like 2019, this showed like very like handsome looking game. So like just like yeah, very very bright, colorful game. One of the best looking games in the system, I think, as far as that goes. So, the music also in this game is very, very good, I thought. They tried to match the music to sound like sound. They tried to theme the music of the stage.
Right.
For example, Japan is a very Japanese sounding theme. Africa has a very tribal, a lot of drums. Harsh sounding tones.
it's just Africa by
Yeah.
Toto.
That'd be pretty cool. I'd be fine with that too.
Right.
Soundtrack of this game is very good. I was expecting it to be anything, but the music, but I was very pleasantly surprised by the music in this game.
Yeah, it's very fitting, and again, it just adds to what I said with it's got style. This game has style.
Yep.
You could say
Yeah.
that about basically every aspect of this game.
Right. So, yeah, and we already talked about the controls, the pros and cons of that.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, there are again, like the Mario games, the developers clearly were inspired by the Mario games. There are secret warp gates like in this game. If you go to certain areas in most stages and do a certain action, you can be warped automatically to the next stage. So that's cool. The game itself actually has a pretty good length for a platformer. The most long plays on YouTube with this game average about 3 hours.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. There is a tool-assisted speedrun in the game in 37 minutes.
Sounds about right. Actually, I would like to see that. And I saw a non-tool assisted speedrun for, I think it was like an hour or something.
Yeah.
Hour, a few minutes.
Here's a tool-assisted speedrun that's actually even faster, 15 minutes.
That's tool assisted?
Yes.
Ooh.
He might use the warps. That may be the difference between like his game versus the other game.
Do you have a link for that?
Yes, I do. 1 second, please.
Because who knows, maybe there's some kind of weird exploit where like you clip through something and then kaboom, the game blows up and then you win. I don't know. Yeah, 1521. Wow.
So, let's see. What else can I say about the game? The challenge of this game, I thought the game was a pretty good challenge. Maybe a little bit easy. I think the game was designed for kids, so I understand them making the game kind of more on the softer side, and maybe just because
I mean, this
Yeah.
game kind of looks like something that was made for kids, but also like I think it's also like good enough to be something for adults as well, because it's not super hard, but it's got some sort of challenge in the sense of
sure,
getting from point A to point B and whatnot.
right. So yeah. So the difficulty of the game felt so I think very good platform players will have this game a bit easy. But for most other people, people out there, especially kids, I think that I think they'll find this game to be a very good, very good difficulty level. And yeah,
Right.
I can still see kids playing this game and having fun with it. Just having fun with it 2019. Because how the game, because how the game looks and plays and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this tool-assisted speedrun is certainly using all of the warps.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I figured that was the difference. I think the one that's in 37 minutes just goes through the whole game. Like if by using the warps. So
That's interesting how it shaves it down to 15 minutes if you use the warps. That's curious.
Well, the Mario games, you're able to go through those games in like about 10-15 minutes usually, like if they use the warp. So, sounds about right.
Yeah, but also, again, it's one of those things where, like, of course this would never happen, like, back then around the time the game came out, because nobody would have really known about every single warp. Maybe you found one by accident somehow, or you found the information on how to warp in a specific place, but how are you supposed to know that, like, oh hey, right here is, right here you jump 4 times and then, oh hey, you warped,
Yeah, the warps in this game are not easy to find. I mean, it's not like warp restores like in the Mario games. I mean, these warps you really have to know. I can't see anybody finding these warps by accident because they require a very specific jump, a certain number of jumps, and a certain number of a certain location to activate them. So
I mean, imagine if like a Super Mario Brothers 3 or whatever came out now. I'm sure somebody at some point would figure out where all the warps are so you could get to the last world very quickly. And then a lot of people wouldn't see like the whole game because they'd probably just look it up online and be like, oh, how do I beat this game or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
So, but game design doesn't. Video games are totally different nowadays. So.
Oh yeah, of course. So.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talk about. One last thing I can. So one last thing I can talk about. There are objects. The objects also defined in the game. You need to. These objects will be used to have to solve puzzles because there are some puzzles in the game too.
Right.
Pretty easy puzzles I think, but there are. But they are here. Teleporters, for example, will move clean to the point like in the level. And oftentimes the teleporters are the only way to reach an area of the stage they wouldn't be able to reach otherwise, usually. Cloud can be walked on this game, curiously enough.
It seems like this game doesn't have like a limit on how fast you can move. So the tool-assisted speedrun just like totally exploited that. And there was a level that was just like a long stretch going across. So they just used that exploit and they were just really zooming ahead. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny what you find in like the old games.
Yeah. Or newer games. I mean, they had that thing with Half-Life 2.
Oh yeah,
where, you were able to the bunny hop, and then they fixed it, but then they broke it because you were able to like go faster backwards.
Right.
Weird stuff. Look it up if you're interested for more details.
The speedrunners probably also make heavy use of zoomers. Those are objects in the game that would like zip you along. They have like rapid speed. They only work for the clay ball, like for Uzi.
We didn't even talk about the there's like a power up you can get. That's kind of like an R type or like a Gradius maybe esque type of like orb that follows you when you use that as an attack.
Oh yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that definitely reminded me of such shooters that I've mentioned before.
Right. Yep. So, So there's also golden stars you can find every now and then. They'll give you like a free life. You also got to be careful about. You also have to be careful about things like being as clay traps. Yes, they're called clay traps.
Of course they are.
Spikes, bad bricks, and windstalks. I did not know that was called a windsock. Flag of this game. So cool. So I now know it has a name.
The item in the game or the item in general?
The item in general.
Really?
Yeah.
You've never heard of windsock?
I heard of it. I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what it was called though.
Huh.
So
weird.
Yeah. So. But.
All right.
Cool. And finally, last but not least, you would last but not least, you can also find pinatas every now and then, which you break open to find items. So I think that's pretty much everything. So I think it's pretty much. So I think that's pretty much everything we can talk about as far as the game goes. I don't really have too much negative to say about the game. The controls are one thing we mentioned before. They could be, I wish you could like remap the controller. That would help.
I wish run and attack weren't on the same button.
That's what I mean. Yeah. If you could remap the controller, that would solve that problem. So,
no, if the developers thought of the fourth button on the face of the controller, then this wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I suppose so. But
yeah.
So the collision detection in this game seems very good. I thought there were a couple of spots where I could have sworn that I hit, that I was off. So it might just be because the hitboxes of the creatures are very different. And if you're using one heavily and switch over to another creature, but you don't realize it. So got to be very careful. I think switching between creatures that you have to, because you really have to, because and this is a good thing. I think you really have to adapt your playing style to change depending upon what creature you're at. So you got to be very careful, careful about enemies, how you approach them, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I really don't have too much else negative to say about the game. Beyond that point. The game reviewed very well when it came out. The game sold very well when it came out. I couldn't find any sales figures, but the game, the game got very favorable marks in the magazines of the day and whatnot. And even nowadays, store ranks, store reviews very well. It gets an average of 4 out of 5 stars.
Oh, all right then.
So, yeah. Like I said, start the podcast. This is a very, like well thought of, like well beloved platformer, like these reasons. So, and I can understand why. I'm kind of sorry I missed this game back when I was a kid because I think, because I think I really would have enjoyed it. So, I know platformers are not. Platformers are not your favorite genre, George. But what do you think about the game overall?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, definitely. This is definitely one of those games where they put a lot of effort into it.
Yes.
I don't know what they put the most effort into, but it definitely is a product of quality. I wasn't too crazy playing it, but it definitely wasn't as bad as some other platformers that we've played.
Yeah.
For this podcast. So.
Yeah, it has like. Yeah, exactly. I think like we talked about the podcast. This game has a lot of this game has a lot of has a lot of like unique factors and things to it, which kind of make it like stand out. So.
Right.
So. Yeah, very fun, very challenging game. Challenging in the sense that I thought it was a very like good, well balanced difficulty challenge. It wasn't like bash your controller, against the wall hard. Which a lot of platformers in this game, which a lot of platformers of this day, I meant to say, were definitely. So.
Right.
So, because the game sold very well, and apparently had a very large print run, the game's pretty cheap today to get, at least in CIB form. I'm sorry, at least in cart form. CIB form is, of course, pricier, but then, of course, that's typical for CIB games.
Right.
40 copies of the game currently listed on eBay. 25 copies recently sold. These are all North American versions of the game, also from the US to Canada. These prices include shipping. Card only. You can have this prices sold anywhere ranging from $6 to $29.
That's not bad at all.
Nope, very cheap.
No,
So
that's pretty good. Yeah,
so,
it's pretty good actually.
Yep, definitely worth $6. So,
Right.
CIB pricier, but still not bad for Super NES games. CIB, there was actually only two CIB examples, two examples of this game CIB that sold recently. Actually, one of them sold for $40.50. The other one sold for $76.
Wow.
So, I mean, so not bad still as far as like CIB prices go.
I guess.
But and unfortunately, this game has not been re-released like anywhere. It's not been it's not been in the Virtual Console. It's not it's not gotten any like ports anywhere. So if you want to play it, emulation of cards are the way to go. So I'm not sure why. You would think a game as popular as this would have been snapped up by somebody. Visual Concepts is still business today, so they probably would have been happy to negotiate the rights. I'm not sure.
Wait, they're still around?
I thought so, based upon based upon our past podcast. Let me confirm that real quick. I thought.
I would want to know what they're doing then.
Yes, they're still around. They are part of 2K Sports.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they're all making. Since 2002, all they've done is like sports games because of that.
Okay.
So, actually, I'm sorry, not all sports games. The sports games they have made a few non-sports games
I'm
over
just
the
waiting
years.
for them to release a sports game where everyone's made out of clay.
For example, they made the pretty. They probably would like for us to forget they made this game. Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer for the PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2006. So
It's not a bad game.
it did not review very well. I've not played it myself, so I can't comment on that beyond that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe it's because the only thing I think about is that the think about its possible reason is that Claymates, like Clay Fighters, was developed jointly with Danger Productions, which was which is the company which handled all the animation work. They had they actually handled all the clay motion, the stop animation, that kind of stuff. So. There may have been, because they didn't have Visual Concepts may not have had the entire rights to the game because of that. So maybe they couldn't even offer it.
Yeah, but is that company still around?
No, they're not around anymore. So
Didn't think so.
I have no idea. Yeah, it's always the question mark what happens to rights when companies go out of business. So sometimes sometimes other companies acquire them as part of a package. Sometimes companies get the rights without even knowing they have the rights, and other times the rights just go into limbo, which nobody.
And sometimes the rights go to a law firm for some reason.
Yeah, System
What game
Shock,
was that
so.
again?
System Shock.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird. Very weird.
Yep. So it's fun. What about the whole brouhaha that happened recently? Like about Star Trek Origins. Did you hear about that?
No. What happened with that?
Well, the Stardock bought the rights to the franchise,
Right.
but Toy for Bob stole the rights to the name. So
Oh, jeez.
So when Stardock came out with the new Star Trek Origins game recently, they got sued by Toys for Bob's, and the game got yanked from sale for a short period of time until they worked out a compromise, and the game's out for sale. And the game's not available for sale again.
All right then.
So yeah, so Anyway, yeah, Claymates. Very, I was surprised like how good this game is. Very good platformer game. Definitely check it out. If you're a fan of like platform games.
Yeah, it's a cool game.
Yep. I definitely can see why Daniel loved this game so much as a kid because it's a very like endearing game. So, definitely one of those games that stick with you. Like over the years. So, besides Daniel, we also want to thank our other Patreon backers at this time. If you're interested in joining this cool list, please check us out at www.patreon.com/the SNES podcast. For those $1 a month, you can get perks to be shouted out on the podcast. Being able to dictate a game for us, like Daniel did, and getting early access to the feeds. You get the episode a couple days early. We also want to thank at this time, besides Daniel, Chad, Lowry, Richard, and Swim for your support of the podcast. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks. So we can be found on Facebook. We have a group on there. We also are a proud member of both the Throwback Network and Retro Junkies podcast networks. We can find a whole bunch of other great podcasts, both retro and non-retro gaming related. We're also available on iTunes. And if you want to, you can also email me directly. The email is the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. George, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter if you're interested. That would be at Mr. Chief at MISTURCHEEF, and that's about it.
Alrighty then. So, George, it's your pick for this podcast next. So what are we playing next time?
Oh boy, we're going to be playing a game that didn't come out over here. Yet again. Energy Breaker.
George is interesting Japanese picks, but
I'm interested in good games.
Well, it looks curious. It looks interesting at least. I'll give it that much.
It's like a Final Fantasy Tactics-esque game, but there's more to it.
Yeah,
it's kind of complex, and I'm still trying to figure out how to play it.
I've not played it too much yet, but I'm also gonna get too much yet. But I also got a Tactics Org buy from it too. So
yeah, kind of.
Yeah, should be interesting to check out. So it's like most of like many of the Japanese games are translated these days, which you usually play by just applying. Well, it depends. Sometimes you have to apply the translation fixture to your ROM to your ROM yourself. Other times you can find the ROM posted somewhere like already translated for you. So
right, and they're not actually supposed to be doing that.
Correct, but
yeah.
but these old games, most companies like don't care. So I've never heard of anybody getting in trouble like by doing that. So, but anyway, so that's what we covering our next episode. We have some other special games episodes planned in the episodes to come, so stay tuned for that. And as always, we always appreciate your support very much. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. Play with Clay every now and then. It's very like therapeutic.
That's a weird suggestion, but okay.
Well, it's true. It's been proven in studies.
Or you could just play video games.
That works too. Take care, all.
Play your video games.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep power.